Hey, folks, welcome back to the Dog and It Show. We're here with Melina Mike and Mike Pinozzo of Billiards Digest. I'm Joey Ryan. Thanks again for joining us. Let us know if you can hear us and see us okay in the chat. We have an interesting discussion for you guys today, one that started with one of our last live shows where we were debating and something kind of came up about Derby City. And Pinozzo took the really hard stance that it was not a major, and Melina and I were ready to go to war over this. And so we thought about it and we
I'm
said,
ready to.
well,
I'm getting ready for battle here, boys.
yeah, like,
You need
what's
more
the
armor than
deal?
that, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we were talking and we were like, well, what's the deal? What would constitute a major? How many majors are there in pool? We can look at various sports out there and we can say, hey, you go and look at golf, it's got 4 majors. You look at tennis, it's got 4 majors. You look at other things like, what was the other one you mentioned, Pinozzo?
Well,
Oh,
horse
horse
racing has a
racing.
triple crown, right? So
Yeah,
it's got three.
and I bet horse racing has a triple crown, but then the Breeders' Cup is huge, and I bet they're pissed that they're not considered a major if they're not.
Well,
So
it's not that they're not considered a major; it's that they're not part of the triple crown. Okay,
yeah,
so
true.
and in golf tournaments, they consider the Grand Slam majors. So is the Pro Players Championship there's golf tournaments that are huge, the Tour Championship, Players Championship, Memorial, whatever, that are not considered majors in terms of
The Waste
the Grand
Management
Slam, right?
Waste Management Phoenix Open.
Yeah, well, you're talking about
That's a major
like,
party, I can tell you that.
yeah, major party. Yeah, it's like the Colonial in Austin,
I,
right?
I want to just take this opportunity to say that for once I'm not the one stirring the pot here. So this is all Pinozzo here. Okay,
this
who's
is
pissing
debate.
people off.
This is debate.
And
This is what this stuff should be. This is what's fun.
and secondly, Dom, I had no fucking idea that Pinozzo was gonna be wearing flannel today, or I would have been. But we were,
I didn't get the memo, guys.
Yeah,
It was flannel day. I didn't get the memo.
We usually call each other, but
Yeah.
it didn't happen this day. So here's let's jump right into, is Derby City a major?
Right.
And I
Yes.
say absolutely not.
100%.
And there's a number of reasons that I say it. And listen, let me start by saying I love Derby City. Derby City is an event like no other in pool. It's one of the coolest things you can go to. It's an experience. It's a carnival. It's all that. Okay, and a ton of great players go there. And but if you said your sport had 4 majors, 6 majors, whatever, is Derby City in that top 6? I look at there should be certain things that makes a major. The quality of the field, of course.
Okay, so let me stop you there. Does it check off that box for you?
Nope.
Wow.
And I'll tell you why in a second.
Okay.
Okay. The added money. The best players play. There should be more on the line. Okay. Derby City has $25,000 added to the purse. Sorry, that puts it in about 16th place in terms of top pro pool tournaments. So, and then the kicker to me is the format. I refer to it as a GAF format, which it is. And Greg Sullivan will be the first one to tell you that. He did this on purpose to encourage lesser players to figure, he always said, I want people to think they're a sucker if they don't play, right? So, the idea that you could have a loss and get a bye into the final, come on, please. The idea that guys, forfeit halfway through the tournament because they're playing an action upstairs or because they got a 1-pocket match they got to play because they're in 3 divisions at one time. I just don't think that lends itself to being one of your top major professional pool titles. Is it a significant title? Absolutely. Is it prestigious? Absolutely. But when you get into, and we'll have to discuss how we're going to define major, but you get into major titles in a sport, I just don't see how this one's in there.
All right, so let's explain the GAF format for people who aren't familiar with it. Maybe they're new to the show, they're new to pool. Derby City, correct me if I'm wrong, but they take all of the entries, maybe 400 entries, and then they do a random draw, and then those players play each other. You might have 200 and some matches, right? And then out of that, they give players who lost an opportunity to rebuy, and maybe they're left with 250 players, right? Then they do a completely random draw again, and then those players play each other. So in theory, You could play the very best player in the tournament in the first round and you can lose. And then you could play that same player in the second round and with your rebuy and lose again and be out of the tournament. Right. And so they continue doing this random draw each round along the way until you're left with two players and the winner of that match is the winner, provided that the loser doesn't have a rebuy left. Correct? Did I get that formula right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. And that's what you're calling a gaff formula, like a
yeah,
gaffy type
yeah.
of
I mean,
tournament.
and the fact that it's not seeded as well. It's just totally random.
So it's
100%.
harder, in other words, because you might have to face a tougher opponent earlier than what you expected. So you're saying it's more
You're saying
difficult.
unseeded tournaments are harder to win than seeded tournaments.
Well, yeah, because the seeded player is going to have a more of a comfortable ride. Look at
But you're
look at
talking
any
about the strength of the field and wanting
right.
the cream to rise to the top and all that stuff. I just don't think that any tournament like that, if you took Wimbledon and say we're going to make it harder for you to win, we're going to make it unseeded, would those players still consider it the major tournament that it is? I don't think so.
When did they start reseeding tournaments in pool? This past year?
Well,
Reseeding.
Like I haven't seen a pool tournament seeded before this year. Now you've covered the sport for a lot
no.
longer than me.
Yeah, no, they've been
but
seeded. There's been plenty of years
Yeah.
where the top tournaments have been seeded.
What have you been living out in a rock, Melina?
like
Yeah.
like when? Like give me an event.
All the world championships have been seeded.
No, they're
I
not
believe
seeded.
so.
No, I don't believe
I
so.
believe they've been seeded by WPA rankings or something like that, right, Mike?
They used to.
Yeah.
Maybe they used to, but I'm not saying that they
I think
have been as of late.
I think you've
The
been
U.S. Open
living
got
under
to
the
the point
same
where
rock
it
where
was
you had that
seeding.
flannel shirt.
The U.S. Open had been seeded for some time when Barry Berman was running it.
So nobody knows how long.
I don't know.
We did our homework.
Yeah.
But I just think seeding is legit. Does it make it harder if it's not seeding? Sure, because it's more random. It's more.
I think it gives it more credibility. I'll give you that.
It favors, yeah, credit. Well, don't you want your majors to have credibility?
We do, and
Within
let's talk
reason,
about
though.
that. Let's talk about that because here's something. I'll go to the Melina Mike eye test. He's famous for that, right? You give him all this data on something, and he'll say, "Well, it doesn't pass my eye test. My eye test says that Mario he strokes the ball better than so and such, so he's the best player in the world." Anyway,
Joey
what
has
about the
Mario.
prestige of the event? If you think about it, look at when they go ahead and read off a player's credentials before a tournament, right? They're about to be in the finals of a tournament and they're like, "Oh, we have Jason Shaw, winner of this, winner of that, winner of this." Derby City is always right there at the top. If they won a world championship, that's going to be at the top. They won a US Open, that'll be next. Then it's Derby City, usually for these players. They're not going to say, "Oh, he won the UK Open and then he won Derby City." Derby City has this name and reputation in our industry for the last ever since I've been following pool. That when you have a player that's won one of the disciplines at Derby City, they're putting that right up behind the world championships and the U.S. Open when they're reading off credentials.
Yeah, there's
That's
no
what
doubt
I'm
the
saying.
prestige and history has a huge part of it for sure, no doubt about it. But still, I'm just talking about credibility, and you guys talking about the field. The quality of the field. I mean, there's great players there. There's no doubt about it. Okay, let's look at this year's field. Albin's not there. Mario's not there. Victor's not there. Kazakis is not there. Max is not there. Ko is not there. That's 6 out of the top 10 ranked players in 9-ball. Okay? 6 aren't there. Next 10, Kachi's not there. Al Youssef isn't there. Solnaki's not there. Fayan's not there. Biesterbatch is not there.
What are you doing? Are you
Alcade's
messaging? Are you private messaging all these guys ahead of
I
time?
have been because I want to know what I'm talking about. Now you got 7 out of the second.
You're
10
making us look real silly here with facts, Mike. Let me tell you.
Got 13 out of the top 20 players in the world 9-ball rankings aren't even there. And you're talking to me about how great this is because they got 500 players. Well, there's more dead money in this field than there are dead voters in a Chicago election. I mean, it's like a GoFundMe for pool players, this event.
Were they there last year, Mike?
Some of them, and I'll tell you, here's another thing. Okay, some of them were, some of them weren't. Not all of them. I would say half of them maybe weren't there.
Let's start listing them because I know Albin was there. I know Alex was there.
Right.
Who else? Kachi,
FSR.
FSR, and I
yeah.
don't know if FSR is at this one. And so let's
Josh was
talk
there.
about that. Let's talk about that. Why aren't they here? You know why half of them aren't here? Because they're preparing for the World Pool Championship. So you're telling me that they're skipping a major to prepare for a major.
The major. The World Nine Ball. The
So
major.
you're skipping Wimbledon to get ready for the French
I think it's more of a product
because it's
of
different because it's
scheduling.
different surfaces.
Not just that, but Derby can wear you out. That's a big part of it. Derby
Yeah,
can
it's
be.
it's a
Yeah.
scheduling issue
Well,
too. It's
okay,
not the easiest place to
let's
get
talk
to.
about that too. Why does Derby wear you out?
It's a grind, Mike. You know that long hours,
Okay,
long days.
400 players.
Yeah.
for all these because you got all these different disciplines, right? If it was 25,000 added, that format redraw, and it was 9-ball only, are these players come into the country for this tournament?
Wait, say that again. I wasn't paying attention
If
to
the
you.
Derby City Classic was a 9-ball only tournament with 25,000 added and that format, are these players all coming over from Europe to play in this event? Because we're talking about majors in 9-ball, right?
Yeah.
So I think that also.
Are we talking about just 9-ball or rotation? I think we're talking
Talk
about
about whatever
rotation.
you guys want. We'll talk about.
Yeah,
We'll
no, I
talk
think
about.
we're talking about majors and pool, which is an interesting
Yeah.
debate. Are we
Okay.
talking about like a tournament, like a one pocket tournament where they add 25,000, or are we just talking about rotation games?
We talk
I
about whatever you think would consider majors. I guess rotate. Well, even if you got a World 8-ball, would you consider it a major? So I guess you'd even put 8-ball into the equation if you're coming up with majors. But we're gonna have to have that separate discussion on how you want the industry and the pro side of the sport to consider a major. So
Here's a question, Pinozo. Here's a question.
yeah,
What's harder to win, the World 9-ball or Derby City 9-ball? What's a harder tournament to win?
World 9-ball.
You're sure?
Just judging by the 13 players out of the top 20 aren't here, I would say,
Yeah, but there's plenty of
they're all
others
going to
that will
be.
be there. There's plenty of others that will be there, along
But
with
all the other ones
another
who will be there will
390.
be with these guys at the World Championship. The World Championship is a tougher field from top to bottom than Derby City, no doubt about it.
Okay, maybe this year it was, but
Hold on.
wait. I'm gonna stop him right there because lest we forget that for about 10 years it was such a wash of a tournament, Mike. Go look back at with the year that Carlo won, the year that Federer won. I mean, there's been a lot of years where the World Championship wasn't. I mean, it was so empty, Mike.
It was well, most of the top players were still there.
No, it wasn't. I mean,
The
don't get me wrong.
Europeans were always there. The Europeans were always there. Shane was always there. Cheng was always there. Ko was always there.
By that
Seattle
standard,
was
the
always there.
Derby City of last year would have been a major because it's got a different name to it. Then, like you can't
No,
pick and choose when you apply that.
No, we're talking about one facet of it now. We're arguing about the quality of the field. I've never said that the quality of Derby Field isn't good. I haven't said it's great. You look at the list of champions; it's phenomenal. They're all, and it's a historic, prestigious event. I'm not arguing any of that. And the field has been good. The field's not as good as the World Championship is these years. Period.
This year it'll be great. Even the one in the UK 2 years ago wasn't that great of a field. They were picking Joey Ryans out of the streets in London to come fill that sucker up.
For the last couple of spots.
Come on, man.
For the last couple of spots,
Yeah.
the top players were there.
I'm from Ireland, I'll have you know.
The top players were there. If you looked, I'll tell you what, if you looked at the top 20 in the world 2 years ago, there were more than 7 there. And you're talking about 7 out of the top 20 being here.
This year.
No, I just think, if you're, and we'll drill down more to what the what the definition is of major, but I just don't see, I don't want majors to be the same thing that during the 80s and into the 90s world was. They used to have 5, 6, 7 world championships a year in the 80s. Anybody who wanted to have a tournament would call it the 9-ball World Open or the World Open 8-ball or the World Open.
Well, yeah, I mean,
anybody who won those tournaments.
Charlie Williams did all those years,
right? And so they wrote. So you got all these guys from those years who has these resumes that say 7 world titles, 10 world titles. I mean, there was a 10-year period. There were probably 27 guys who had world titles. It was stupid, and I don't want majors to fall into that same trap of being anybody who wins something that had a good field at it is called a major. No, it shouldn't
Yeah.
be that way. Not
Yeah.
if you want to be legit, not if you want your sport to look
Look,
like a sport.
the point of my question about what's a harder tournament to win was more kind of playing off the angle of the GAF format. The sheer number of players every year, you see someone at Derby who gets upset by someone that they probably shouldn't have lost to, who wouldn't be in the World Championship, right? And so that's my point. It's kind of like a gauntlet that you have to run. It's completely unique to everything else in pool. You're going to have
But
to beat a lot of
but in
shortstops,
a
a lot of guys,
not legitimate way.
but they
You're
still
making
have
it
to play
tough.
the
You're making
race.
it tough by not, you know, by catering to the lesser players. That's the way you're making it tougher. And
It's
that's, to
still,
me, that's no way to run a sport.
well,
How are you
okay.
catering to let lesser players in the nine ball? I don't understand.
Because you have it unseeded and you have a buyback. So lesser players have a better chance of sneaking through without having to play a good player because Shane had to play Sky in the first round.
Yeah, they get 4 or 5 rounds
I
deep
mean, that's
without
your
Wait,
having
whole
to
wait,
play.
wait.
argument. That's your whole
No, wait a
argument,
minute. Wait,
Mike.
wait, wait. But how many Shanes and Skies are there versus how many Joe Blows are
According
there
to you,
out of that
150.
out of that 500?
Hey, Melina, can you send
According to you,
Jeremy Jones an invite to
150.
this? Melina, send Jeremy Jones an invite to this. He's so geared up about this. He's replying to himself. You see that comment there? He's like commenting and then replying to his own comment. He's like really fired up about this topic. Oh, it's
Send him a
funny.
link. Let's get him in here. I need
Yeah,
someone
let's
else
get
on
him
my
in here.
side
This would
against you
be.
two donkeys.
Well, we can't have someone like Jeremy come in here and make us all look silly. All right.
Well, hold on. I think one of the points that we have to lay out, if we're talking about what a major is how many majors are we going to have in pool? Because if we're going to have 15, then yeah, Derby City's in there. If we're going to have 4, like you'd have in tennis or golf, then no, it's probably not in there, right? You have at least 4 world championships that have to be considered.
Okay, so
So, what do you think is a reasonable
do you
amount?
have do you have the graphic that I sent you, Joey?
I do. You want to see it?
Is this a cool time to throw it up there?
Sure, why not?
Okay,
There it is.
so there's a little graphic I put together of what considered to be the top tournaments. You see total prize fund, you see added money, you see the fields, the entry fee, top prize. I think all those help establish what a major tournament is. On this list, Derby City is the smallest in every way, but that's beside the point. There's 14 tournaments here. Do you want your pro tour to, a newspaper writer from outside our industry talks to people in our industry, and someone won 8 majors last year? Sounds kind of silly to me.
Yeah.
So
I
if
agree
you
with
want to
that.
have something that you want to hang your hat on, I would say you would have something, ideally for a grand slam. That to me, do you have a career grand slam? Did anybody win the grand slam in 1 year? Whatever. That to me is what it would be. What you call the other 10 tournaments, and I could leave Derby in that list. That would be fine with me. Would be what? I don't know. The ideal thing would be to call them pro tour titles and to limit your number of pro tour titles. But obviously, there's not a pro tour. That said, I think there is going to be, in the next couple of years, what someone will organize as a pro tour, and these events might all be part of that. And then you would have something on, already in place that you could just continue on, right?
Mhm.
So that's just a thought. What do you think, Mike? You've been quiet.
Well, first of all,
It's
let
hard.
me
It's hard.
just I
Like,
just want to say your random use of the dollar sign symbol is bothering me.
No,
Being
you know what?
someone as a
It's
former
my
analyst,
inability to use Excel. I don't know how to get the cells to all do the same thing. So yeah,
as a
that's an
former
Excel
analyst and somebody who's pretty anal and knows spreadsheets pretty well, I was really taken back by your use of dollar signs.
thing.
But I will say this: thank you for putting this together, Pinozo. I know this issue is near and dear to your heart, which is why you went through the trouble of putting together such a list.
It's
I
just a
find
great
it
topic.
interesting,
It's a
and
great barstool sports topic.
it really is. And when you look at Derby City laid out like this, I can see your point for sure that it wouldn't be considered a major. Um, I'll concede that point to you. However, what are we going to pull off this list and call a major out of here?
Well,
You look at certain.
that's a great discussion to have afterwards.
Yeah, let's look at this because you have something like the World 8 Ball. It's a world championship event. I think anybody would say if it's a world championship event, it needs to be a major. But then you have other tournaments like the UK Open and the European Open with more players, more added money. I think you might have to consider that.
Yeah,
But lower entry fee too, which, what was your, let me ask you this. As you were building this spreadsheet, obviously you were building this to prove your point that Derby City is not a major and to lay
it's a
out,
lot of it's a lot of trouble to go through for one freaking
well,
tournament, isn't it?
but you're pretty passionate about it. So explain to us your thought process about the size of the field, the entry fee, the added money, the total prize fund, all of these different things that are in here, the top prize. Like, what were some of the things going through your head as you're laying out the spreadsheet? Because obviously, those figures, those metrics meant something to you.
Yeah,
So
yeah, no, that's a good point. And I just, the entry fee, I don't really care a lot about. The added money to me has always been a key thing because that's not players playing for their own money, and so there's more added to the event. I think that if you look at Efren Reyes' career, he's not even close to one of the biggest title winners. You look at the top 20, top 10 money events ever in pool, he probably won 6 of them. They know when the big money is there, and that's what they're going after. So added money and top prize to me are always something significant that you want to be able to hold up as a major in your sport. The guy won $1 million for this tournament. Yeah, it's a major. So those to me would be two criteria that are pretty important. Size of the field, I can give or take because you get to those qualified, and you would like eventually all pro tournaments and all majors to be you have to qualify for this. So they may all cap out at 128. I wouldn't have a problem with that either. So, but you have to earn your way in, right? So the size of the field doesn't bother me much. Entry fee doesn't bother me much, but the added money and the top prize is to me is kind of a significant thing in putting that together.
So where are you at then, Mike? Outside of the obvious, the World 9 Ball, you get the World 10 Ball. I
Well,
don't think anyone's
yeah,
going to
it's
argue.
so. What would you guys think? Would you guys think 4 major? Would you want to have a Grand Slam in pool?
yes,
Yeah, definitely.
I think it
Okay.
brings credibility, right? When that way we can all. One of the things that excited me about this podcast, and I don't know if it's a pipe dream here, but at the end of this podcast, we come up with some brackets, right? And we say, hey, these are the majors. These are like the, mid level, and these are the, kind of lower level professional tournaments. And then that way people could start talking about them on like terms, right? And
Right.
when we're comparing players and we're talking about the career of Josh Filler versus the career of Carlo Beato, we can take a look at, well, how many majors has Filler won and how many majors has Beato won? How many
Right.
mid-level,
Right.
that type of thing. And so that's one thing I was hoping to get out of this. And it's just 3 guys tossing us around. We love the feedback that's coming in on the comments. Keep it coming. Love Jeremy's passion towards all this. You saw all of his comments in here, but I do think like when you hear talking heads on ESPN or other shows, you're hearing them talk about golf with green jackets and majors and total tournament wins, things like that. And in pool we don't really have that because things are a little disconnected right now. We have 2 big entities in the pro space, and then we have independent events that are kind
Right.
of knocking on the door. So that's one reason I was really excited to talk about this. If you're asking me, out of that list that you have up there, World 9 Ball, World 10 Ball, World 8 Ball have to be there. US Open has to be there. I'd love to say International Open. Not so sure.
Yeah.
And then there was one other I was considering that. What am I missing?
How would you rank the international a major?
Well, that's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering if we should. In some
Yeah.
cases, the international field. I remember 2 years ago. I think the international field seemed like it was tougher than the U.S. Open field.
Yeah, the international is, that's a good one to discuss because, um, if I was picking my 4, it's hard not to include a world championship, right?
Yeah.
But here's my argument against that. come on, I think about
You're
this
gonna,
This
stuff.
is
don't
this
you
is what we're here
dare,
for,
Well,
Mike.
don't
I'm
you,
thinking. Here's the thing. Part of
don't
the
you
way.
dare say the World Eight
Mike is
Ball is
this.
not included.
No, Mike is the same guy who discredited the World Nine Ball Championship for years up until Shane won. So just
No, I
let's just
didn't
fix that.
discredit. I said it
Yeah,
was not as. I said it was not as good a big a title or as tough a title to win as the U.S. Open was when and I
tomato
will stick to
tomato.
that till the day I die. But so here's my concern with the World Championships, the World 8 Ball and the World 10 Ball. Okay, so if you have your majors, there's going to be 4 majors to make your Grand Slam. They have to be historical, every year events. Otherwise, you lose credibility in year 2.
So
Okay.
like Derby.
World 10 Ball is the first time, it's been 3 times since 2015. The World 8 Ball is the first time in a decade they ran it. Okay. Unless you're going to guarantee me that these events are going to be here every year going
Good
forward,
point.
I don't want them on my list. So I would look at my pick. If I was picking today for the next 5 years, whatever it is, I would say World 9 Ball. I would say US Open. I would say the International. And
The-
in the International because of history of the event. I mean, that's the
It's
US
been here for
Open.
15 minutes. What are we talking about? The
No,
International Open
it's
barely got
it's
started a few years back.
It
it,
was the
to
U.S.
me
Open,
it
Mike.
was the US Open. The Titleist when Matchroom puts on that the US Open winner in 2013 was Shane Van Boning. It was the International Open. So, you were splitting hairs. But again, I'm talking about something that I know is going to be there next year, that has history and that has great fields and is respected and has all the right formats and things like that. 50,000 added could be better, but I think that's still a really prestigious title. So I would take those 3 for sure. And then what you add as a fourth, I don't know. What do you guys
Hey,
think?
check
I
out
mean,
check out the comment. Check out the comment here from Kenneth Felton. I think it's a valid one. We've had a couple people say stop comparing it to golf. Robert White said that, and I think there's a point there that it's more like maybe a bracelet series from the World Series of Poker or something because you have all different disciplines, right? So, I mean, maybe we're
yeah,
barking up the
that's
wrong tree with looking for 4 tournaments to pick out and call a major. Maybe it's a series of 8 or 10 events that are signature events throughout the year. And
but
by the way,
in
I wanted to
poker,
ask
what do they
you.
determine? They always talk about the winners saying he's got 2 braces, he's got 1. How do they determine the tournament itself? Do they say, he's got, do they determine it as a major? Do they determine it, or do they just
Oh, I
say
think they have like
we had
20
we had
some.
10 bracelet tournaments last
Yeah.
year?
So one thing that's difficult with that comparison is you have one entity running the World Series of Poker events, right? And here, if you look on that spreadsheet that you have there, what do you have? 5, 6 promoters, that run these different events, or at least 3 or 4. And then when you bring in the other tournaments, you have even more promoters. So it makes it a little bit challenging in pool.
Mm-hmm.
But by the way, I meant to ask, why did you not include? I think I know, but why did you not include the Whirlpool Masters?
Invitational.
Yes, really small field invitational.
Yeah, but the
You know,
best. I mean, like
it is,
Oh,
but
it's
I
the
mean
relax,
cream of the crop.
relax.
my,
It's
well,
easy,
yeah,
easy
no,
there,
the
Tiger.
World Cup of
Easy there,
Pool,
Tiger.
the Whirlpool Masters, World Cup of Pool, Moscone Cup. I mean, Matchroom doesn't even include those in their 9 ball
Look,
ranking points.
obviously
So
Moscone
how
Cup
can
and World
we?
Cup of Pool. Nobody's saying anything about
Well, they
those.
don't. They
But
don't
the
include the
Whirlpool
Masters in their
Masters.
points either
How many
because
players are in
it's
the Whirlpool Masters? 32.
32. Yeah,
Yeah.
32
So 32
invitational,
hand
not based on
selected
merit.
top players.
Right.
I mean,
It's an invitational event.
I don't know. I love that event. I think it's
I
it's
do
a really
too. It's a
it's a
great title
really
to
hard
have. I
event to
mean, it's
win.
a great title to win, but it's not an open field tournament. What do you think, Mike?
No, I don't think you can't include the Whirlpool Masters. You had Loho Sum, who was working at Home
Yeah,
Depot right before he got invited. He got
right.
invited to that event before it makes to the finals. So no, you cannot include the
I will
Whirlpool.
bet you
Yeah, and that's a
$100
that's
that
a
he
really
wasn't working at Home Depot.
Look,
Okay.
I'm just saying, all right. He was the backup quarterback on the practice squad of like the Eagles, getting picked to go quarterback for the Titans that last week. No,
Jeez.
I don't know. There's a lot to take in. Mike, it's hard to argue against facts, and Mike's provided a lot out of them. So kudos to Mike for that. I agree with you on the history part, but it's like certain aspects of this list you pick and choose that. hey, this is going to apply here for this one, but not for this one. Like in the
Like what?
international, the international and its history, you can
That's
say it
true.
was the U.S. Open, but it's not the U.S. Open. And who knows how long it's going to be around? You don't know how
Okay, so
much longer Pat's going to be
it's been
around.
run for 4 years. UK Opens,
How
in its
long has the
second
world
year.
is
The
the World Ten
Asian
Ball
Open
been
hasn't
ran?
been run yet. What's that?
How long has the World Ten Ball been ran then?
3 times in the last 7 years.
Well, I mean,
I,
it's
So
I will
that's what I mean.
say
You have to. I would include the World 8 Ball. I would include the World 10 Ball if I felt secure that they were going to be there every year going
I will
forward.
say that's a great point. That's a great point. If the World 10 ball, World 8 ball are going to be played every single year, it changes things. But
Right,
given the
100%.
history of
Then you
it,
got to have world championships in there, of course.
yeah,
But don't do it once every 10 years like the World 8 Ball and tell me that it's going to be on your
I,
lifelong majors.
I think the World Championships are going to have to be included. If I'm going on my list of what I think, the World Championships are going to be automatics. And if you look at what was the first event that Matchroom required, it was the U.S. Open, right? So that for me is going to tell you all you need to know as far as how important they feel it is into the staple of this sport. So, for me, those would be my four: World 9 Ball, World 10 Ball, World 8 Ball, and then have the U.S. Open. Everything else is just kind of secondary. Although I'll still stand by, I feel Derby's a major, but I'll leave that aside. Um, I think everything else has the potential, and it seems like everything's on the upside when it comes to added money. Even these events like in its infancy. Look at that English Open added money, 136,000. Look at the
that's
UK
impressive.
Open,
Yeah, no, I mean, there's
the
no
UK
doubt.
Open.
In over the course of some years, they all become much more significant as titles for sure.
It's impressive.
Um,
When you were
yeah,
making this list, Pinoza, I'm curious to know if there were any other candidates that were on the cusp of making this list but didn't.
no,
Something like Turning Stone, Texas Open.
I mean, Turning Stone. I mean, that's not even in the ballpark to me. You know, because
No, they got like
it,
three players every year. That's it.
it's 25,000 added, which is the same as Derby, and does the field's not nearly as strong as Derby, although and there's plenty of knocks on their format too. So, um, so yeah, I don't see Turning Stone as a major. I don't see that even in the discussion. Um, yeah, this to me is this is my list
And no
that
one
I would.
pocket events at all. Not Buffalo's. I think Buffalo's is 25,000. You never considered that
I don't know.
25,000 added.
No,
If you're gonna include other disciplines, though, you at least got to be open minded to it, and this is part of why I
yeah,
think adds to the argument of why Derby is a major. Because if you think about the all around, you know, I mean, you're already including other disciplines in this list, so you can't make it specific just to it's not just 9 ball, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean, you have 8 ball, 9 ball, 10 ball, right? That are very popular disciplines, and you have one pocket that's kind of a niche discipline, right? So
I mean, I
I
don't
could
have
see how
14
you
and one
could,
on here. I don't have 14.1 on here either. To me, that's kind
yeah,
of in the same ballpark as is one pocket right now or bank pool.
yeah.
Well, I don't think anyone's gonna argue bank pool ought to be a major, but I just think the collectiveness of what Derby is, including that. I bet you if you asked a lot of
That's what
players,
makes
winning that all
Derby
around
unique.
is
I
yeah.
love Derby by itself, but I don't want to like jerry rig it to fit to me this space that to me it doesn't.
Okay, what events have you gone to over the last 12 months, Mike?
Derby,
Putting them on the
Okay,
uh,
spot.
U.S. Open, huh?
okay. Come on, I'm listening.
Uh, International,
Okay,
Predator, um, a couple of the
which
Predator events.
so which predator? They got like 18 of them.
Difference to make.
Yeah,
I want the one in Michigan. I know that.
yeah.
Yeah. So, but why?
No, I'm just curious because I know you got plans on being at Derby, and I know you're
Yeah,
only,
I love Derby.
you only like attending the major events.
No, I attend Derby because it's close and because it's fun. It's a great, but I don't go there for 12 days. I'm not a glutton for punishment.
No, I think it's brutal for yeah.
Yeah, I
It
was just curious when I asked the question earlier if there was anything else that even entered your mind to
No,
consider
no,
putting on this list, or
no. But I
anything
mean,
that maybe has
I'm not closed minded. So give me some
an
ideas now.
anything that has the potential if they made a few changes to make it onto this list, right?
You like
If
Derby?
Texas Open increase their added money, or if you know what I mean, like
Um,
Texas Open. I love
t-
Texas Open, but it can never be considered a major.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think Texas Open is always like the biggest of regional events. I look at Turning Stone as being a big regional event. That's kind of the way I look at some of those events.
you agree with that, Melina?
I do, yeah, and I definitely think that there's tiered events. You have things that complement one another, and this is one thing, like for me, that I can appreciate when it comes to Matchroom is how things kind of feed into, the overall big picture. It feeds into World Pool Master rankings. It feeds into the World Nine Ball Championship rankings. It feeds into the World Couple Pool rankings because all of your points that you get added are all going to be used for consideration whether or not you get selected for these things. So that part I enjoy. Whereas the Predator Series event, in its infancy, I think it's got, great potential, but, they have their own ranking points by themselves, and I have no idea what they go towards at all.
Well, and that's kind of why I was saying too. You're talking about Matchroom, and someone in there thought that I'm a Matchroom Emily Schill, but I've got like 9 Predator events in here, so I don't know whatever the argument is. But I do think that as Matchroom continues to take its ball and run with it, and build more of these events, that you will see a Pro Tour label slapped on their list of events over the course of the year, their schedule events over the course of a year, and then and, and then
Right.
you'll have an easier way of determining, how these, then you say this is a Pro Tour title, this is one of the 4 majors, and
Yeah.
maybe it ends up getting separated by discipline. Who knows? Maybe there's, Nine Ball is its own entity, and you've got the Nine Ball majors, which is the World Nine Ball, the U.S. Open, the International, and the U.K. Open, or the U.K. Open and the European Open, or however they want to do it. And you come up with
Well, let me
that.
tell
You come up with tour titles and majors in the Matchroom Nine Ball world. Okay, that to me would make a lot of sense.
I feel like this is a big whiteboard session. I'm up at the whiteboard trying to gather all this information and sketch it out. And so
uh,
here's just to summarize what we've talked about so far, and tell me if I'm wrong about this, but let's say the World 10 Ball and the World 8 Ball are now a consistent event that's going to
yeah.
happen every single year. Then we're taking the World 9 Ball, World 10 Ball, World 8 Ball, US Open, calling those majors.
Well, if you're going to do that, if you're going to just, then I would just keep it to the 3 World Championship, call it a Triple Crown.
Oh, no.
Why?
Don't do that
What's
to
the
me,
difference?
Pinozo. I because
What's the difference between a Triple Crown? Now you're taking one random tournament that's different. Now you're one discipline gets 2 events and the other 2 get 1. It just, it's the Grand Slam Triple Crown. What difference does it make? It's 4 against 3. So, take the 3 World Championships, call it a Triple Crown, be done with it.
as a person from the United States who has grown up cheering for the US
Best
Open,
tournament in the history of the
like
pool.
I have a certain connection with the US Open over the
Yep.
years, and knowing about US Open champions and, even obscure ones are folks that won it in surprise years. Tommy Kennedy, when he won the US
Yeah.
Open, Gabe Owen, people who weren't expected to win the US Open. That event just has a special place in my heart. And I
It
can't
does.
look at the best pool events in the world and not include the US Open. As Melina Mike would say, it passes the eye test for me. And especially now that Matchroom has control of it, and the way the event, like when you look at the top to bottom, you look at the US Open field now. I mean, it's literally one of the toughest fields I think that you'll find in any tournament these days.
How
Yeah, no,
long do you think that?
I love the U.S. Open above any tournament on this list, no doubt about it. So yeah, you would want to, but I'm just saying, and that to me is almost another argument to say, okay, let's just split this into, 9 ball. Here's the 9 ball tour. Here's the 9 ball majors. Here's the 9 ball world championship.
We need
Here's the ten
unity,
ball
Mike.
tour.
We need
Here's the 10.
unity. Pinoza, we need unity. We have too much of this splitting. We're playing 10 ball over here, 9 ball over there. Like, we need unity. We need to
Well,
come
you
together and
got the
say,
World 8 ball championship as one of your majors, right?
yeah.
It's the only 8 ball tournament a year. That to me is
But it's
kind of
but
that's
it's
a
the
hard
game that
sell.
most casual pool players are familiar with.
But we're talking about pros. We're talking about the
I
pro series.
understand.
We're talking
I
about
understand.
the professional end of the sport. and it's like the World Straight Bowl Championship. It's there's more straight bowl tournaments a year than there are eight ball.
Yeah, but
So you're talking about a discipline that is going to be one of your Grand Slam, Triple Crown, Jewel events, and there's one tournament a year.
Yeah, but it's also the same payout as far as first place
Yeah,
as
no,
World Land Ball, and
yeah,
and, and
I can be swayed. I'm just like playing devil's advocate on some of this stuff.
yeah,
ah,
no, I'm going with
the
those
shit
4.
stirrer.
If you're asking me, I'm
It's
going
not
with 10
shit
World 10
star.
ball, World 9 ball, World 8 ball, US Open as the top tier. But then in that second tier, I'm going with the new matchroom events such as
Right?
the Asian
UK,
Open, provided
Asian,
these
yeah,
happen every year.
yeah,
Asian Open, UK Open, European Open, and then also the Predator events in that same tier. Um,
You're going to get to a point where these matchroom events are going to just take over as far as majors, because I think everyone's going to be attending all of these matchroom events. I think the UK Open is going to be stacked. I think the European Open, English Open, I think all of them are just going to be incredibly deep events that we haven't seen. I mean, granted, they're either in its first year or in its first few years, but I think these are on the high rise, man, when it comes to, especially from a depth of field standpoint, because that's on everybody's calendar are the matchroom events.
have you
so
checked calendars? Is there any conflict this year between now that
well,
Matchroom
there's a
has
lot of events that still don't have dates yet. A lot of these kind of quote majors.
this will be
uh,
interesting to look for though. Now that
yeah,
Matchroom is not associated with the WPA at all, will some of those events be scheduled over some of the Predator events or vice versa? Where
I
will
don't
there
think
be
I think
calendar
they would have
conflicts?
done that whether the WPA was around or not if they wanted to, but they just don't have dates yet for some of these, so we're just gonna have to wait and see. Yeah, I
That'll
mean
be
Predator doesn't
interesting.
have dates for all of them either.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's no dates for the World Eight Ball that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I think it's just it's the future. I think this list is going to change dramatically as far as what we
Well,
would consider a quote unquote major. I think it'll still have its like pillars, right? Like the World Nine Ball, we can all agree on. The U.S. Open, I feel like we can all agree on, and I feel like
yeah,
I would have that take even if I wasn't from the U.S. And I think I remember hearing Carl Boyes before talk about the U.S. Open being the toughest event to win,
yeah,
and just the respect that it gets from international players, and that's why everyone from abroad comes over here to play it.
right,
Um, and I can
Do
see
you
your
think
point,
that's
Mike.
still the case though, Mike? Do you think it's
yeah,
still the case
oh yeah.
that's the tough tournament?
Oh, I don't know
Jeremy's
about toughest
Jeremy's
tournament to win.
Jeremy's
Yeah,
still in here. I'd be curious to get his comment on that. If he thinks the U.S. Open is still the toughest tournament to win.
it's
Um,
not. It's
You heard
not,
it.
and the international is not either. And it used to be. And here's another argument. I would love to see if you had your majors and the international was one of them, or the U.S. Open, either one. Change the format a little bit. I don't want to see the U.S. Open, the U.K. Open, the European Open, and the Asian Open all have the exact same format. Then, to me, the cool thing about majors in these other sports is there's little nuances and differences, right?
yeah, that's true.
To me, what always made the U.S. Open the toughest tournament to win in the world was they were long races. They started like at 11 or 13, and it was double elimination all the way through, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Make one of the tournaments like that. Then
Well,
you got, okay, it's a different in bowling. They've got Grand Slam bowling tournaments, right? The formats on all of them are a little bit different. This one's a total pin count. It's a real slog through 7 days of qualifying. This one's more of a match play one. I like that. I like that there's a little bit of difference. In tennis, you got clay, you got grass, you got whatever. So I would like to see some of the pool tournaments do that, and I would love to see the U.S. Open go back to the format the U.S. Open used to be. I understand that Matchroom will never want to do that because they've got
Nope.
live television and you can't get into that unexpected. But okay, have it double elimination to the final four. Okay, and then have a step ladder final instead of a bracket final. Then have a step four plays three, the winner plays two, the winner plays one.
A step ladder
Um,
fight, but you're saying you don't like the gaffiness of Derby City.
good
no, I'm just saying it's a way to
call,
do
Melina.
it's a way to do a double elimination tournament almost all the way to the end.
You know,
Because I know Matchroom would never do it all the way to the end, right? So
Right.
is there some wiggle room there? And I think if you got to double elimination all the way to the final four, then it's essential. It's step ladder anyways. It's the losers bracket semifinal against the winners bracket loser against the winners bracket winner. It's a step ladder anyways. So you're just charting it differently. That's all.
All right, so kind of related to that, but a completely different point that I want to bring up. I talked about the Whirlpool Masters. What I would love to see is qualification for the Whirlpool Masters. You have 32 players treated exactly like the World Cup format. Okay, have your 8 groups of 4. Everybody plays round robin against everyone in their group. The 2 best from each group make it out into a single elimination field of 16 from there. I don't know why we don't do that more in pool. I've played in some straight pool tournaments where that's the format. Maryland straight pool used to be
Yeah.
that way. I think it's called the American straight pool now, where
Okay.
you round robin with the people in your group, and then you make it out of your group. That way, you get to see the best. Like you're gonna get the best 2 players out of every group, or at least the
So,
best 2 who are in the best form at that time coming out of the group. And then you still get the excitement and the drama of a single elimination 16 player bracket from there. I'd
so
love to
this
see that.
so the CLP or PLP,
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah, yeah.
similar to that.
That's similar to that. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, similar to that. So
yeah.
but Mike, part of the problem is Matchroom has stressed that they want to standardize formats. So they're not going to want to change the format just to make it more
I think,
interesting
well, they
for.
want to standardize the game. They want to standardize the break and the rules and the races and things like that. But you can make it so standard that these tournaments are just blueprint copies of each other, and then there's no difference between the UK Open and the European Open and the Asian Open and the US Open, and that's a shame. And the US Open's got 40 something years of history, and the Asian Open hasn't even been run yet. And by the prize fund and the format and the structure of the event, they're identical. So I like, especially if you're going to try to create majors, I like the idea of having some little tweak that's different, that doesn't gaff it up, but just makes one a little bit. If they could make one of them, like you said, more of a round robinish kind of thing, then
To,
it's a different format, but it's still going to lend to the best players playing the best players, and the ones who are playing best get through, and you get that all the way to the final, right?
okay,
I think there's stories there that make the sport more interesting.
I don't want to belabor this point, but I'm going to go back to the Whirlpool Masters. If you look at their qualifying system for Mosconi Cup, that gets you into a team event, right? They could do the same thing where the Whirlpool Masters is the premier individual event, the premier best of the best, cream of the crop, using their point system. And then you get the top 32 out of all of their qualifying tournaments throughout the year in the Whirlpool Masters. And people want to be in that tournament. You up the prize fund, you do it round robin.
Yeah, it's kind of
I
like
don't know.
what's at the end of the NASCAR season, or the chase for the
Yeah,
whatever,
exactly.
that type of thing. Have that's fine too.
Yeah.
It wouldn't
Anyway,
be a major, but it would be cool.
I know one thing that when we had it might be at the end of my. So
Mike's
okay,
just
this is okay. Hold on. Let's just play this out hypothetically. Let's say that the
Uh,
Whirlpool Masters now has a $500,000 added. First prize is $125,000, right? Biggest payout of the year for these players, and it's 32 of the top qualifying players from all their other events. You're going to tell me that's not
not
a major?
why qualify as major? It's its own event with its own. It's a culminating year event with its own title. I mean, I think it would be just the biggest prize in pool. Why do you have to have it as part of your Grand Slam? Or so? I don't see the point of that. They do that in golf. They do it in there's in golf they have the what do they have at the end of the golf season where the top players qualify for
FedEx.
this one thing. It's still not one of the.
Yeah,
It's not a Grand Slam event,
yeah, interesting.
right?
Hmm.
So
Well, I know one thing that was interesting when we had Emily on. And by the way, I'll let Molina get a word in edgewise soon because every time I talk too much on one of these, everybody messages me with like hate
I've
mail
never heard him say
saying
less
how
in my life.
you need Molina to let Molina talk. Let Molina say. So, but I'll just I'll just say this one point. We had Emily on one time. We were talking about the fact that every tournament has to have a 45-minute players meeting before to go through all the different rules that they're going to do that's different than the
Right,
tournament the players
right.
just came from. And she was pretty adamant about, hey, I believe it was right before the US Open or something, Mike. And she tells us that we're not going to have a players tournament. because people
Players
do know
meeting,
the
right?
rules
Yeah,
because they're standardizing the rules,
right.
which, I do agree with that. My
Yeah,
kid's playing a soccer game today in a tournament. They don't need to hear, 30 minutes of the rules of the soccer game. Everybody knows the rules,
right.
And so I think there is validity to that. But by the same token, I do like your analogy. I do like making a tournament or two a little bit different. If you like to go back to golf, the US Open, they let the rough get extra thick, right? It's a completely different challenge. The PGA, the scores are higher, that they just the way they groom the courses for these events are completely different to make it a different test, a different challenge. The Masters is always at the same course, is always at Augusta, yada yada. So I do think it would be kind of cool, but Melina, what do you say? I don't want to get yelled at and get hate mail anymore for not letting you talk. So
You're good.
uh, let's hear from
I
the flannel crew.
I think I think there's evolution in in all sports. I mean, you can look at it uh, baseball, for example, from the different lengths of
Home
the
run fence.
of the home run. Right now, I think aren't they taking they're getting away with the shift now on defense, if I'm not mistaken, in baseball. So the game is still evolving, and you can go back to talking about tennis or golf for that matter. Different locations, different playing surfaces, the clay, the grass, the hard court. I love those differences, Mike, and I'm with you 100%. I do not want to see the same thing over and over and over again. I like those subtle differences, winter break versus alternate break, depending on the box. All those different factors make for a unique event. You know, would Francisco have had the same year if it wasn't, the break box and because I think he had a phenomenal break,
Killed
um,
it.
hitting the ball like that. I don't know, but I like those differences and I can appreciate those differences. I'll say that. So,
And I would only
um,
want to see those like in the four majors. I don't want to see every tournament be something goofy. But yeah, take it if you're going to have, and if again, if it comes down to your list is we're only going to be talking about 9-ball tournaments for this, and you got your 4 9-ball majors. Make each of those 4 just a little tweak different. But once they get to the table, Joey, I'm with you 100%. Same rules. Break from the backs. Whatever. Don't mess with that a whole hell of a lot, but maybe the form, the structure of the flow of the
Yeah.
tournament, maybe, or like Mike said, alternate break, one tournament, winter break, another, whatever. You
so,
don't want to confuse people, but you want to have some differences to me, I think, which makes them interesting.
so if y'all were gonna break it down by discipline, I'm assuming the Predator series would be the majors for the World 10 ball then, and then what would you have be the majors for the World 9 ball then?
What do you mean majors? You mean
If you split them up into discipline,
Right.
my 9-ball majors would be the international. I just love it, the international, but that's one that I think could make itself even cooler by going back to the old U.S. Open format. So I would do the World Open and the World Championship, the U.S. Open, the international, and I don't know what the fourth. Uh,
the Friday
uh,
night chip tournament at Skip and Jan's in Phoenix?
well, I mean, you could take the UK Open.
Or Derby
There's
City.
been.
There was- Got him.
I think you would take one of the other ones. You would. Do you? Yeah, because you don't want. Maybe the Asian Open, so that you've got at least one on each continent, and the 3 main continents, right? So you have like the World Pool Championships in Europe, say, the
That
Asian
thing was a
Opens
rough
in
watch,
Asia,
man.
and
They're
then
breaking.
the U.S. Open and International in the U.S. Then you've got to spread out a little bit geographically. I think that to me would be my selection for the 4 for 9-ball.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, guys. If you're enjoying this, do us a favor and check us out on Patreon. We're patreon.com/dogging it. We have several of our Patreon supporters in here today who just want to point out a few different comments. One of them that came up, which I got to show because I just think this name is awesome, Cornholio. But he brings up something one of our Patreon
We just
supporters said.
lost all credibility, Joey.
Well, one of our Patreon supporters mentioned this too. Hold on. One of our supporters on Patreon mentioned this too.
Yeah,
Should a major have qualification rounds before the tournament? So,
of
one thing
course.
that hasn't been sitting well with me are these huge events that everybody wants to get a piece of. So, they open up registration for the event, and you get a whole bunch of people registering for the event who aren't necessarily pros. And then maybe some of the top pros have a hard time getting in the event. Just curious.
You're not calling out the Derby City, are you, Joey?
Well,
Oh, here we go.
no,
Here we
actually,
go. Yeah,
No, I mean, I just remember like the UK Open when they opened that up, and I
Yeah,
get it, right? All of these players, shortstop players, play my speed, are super excited about now having a Matchroom Pro event in the UK. And so they're on there signing up like crazy. And then people who wanted to go get shut out,
right.
and don't get the opportunity to register because it's sold out in 8 minutes or whatever that was.
I'm
Same way with the U.S. Open. Every year, the U.S. Open, there's tons of shortstop players that want the experience of playing in the U.S. Open, but then you have other players that get shut out and don't get a chance, who maybe have a valid chance to go deep or win that tournament. And I think that point has merit. Perhaps there should be some form of qualifying system. Uh,
I,
Also, if you think about it, with the potential for qualifiers, it really begins to get down and touch the roots of our sport, right? You have those players that are, amateur players who are striving to be better and striving to have opportunity. Some of them who may not be able to afford to enter one of these tournaments, or has a backer to take them and put them in these tournaments. And by way of winning a qualifier, getting their entry fee paid for, maybe some expense help, and now all of a sudden you got a player, maybe a younger player or up and coming player, who now has a chance to get that experience. Just want to get you guys' thoughts on that.
I, I think in a perfect world, no one would argue with you that that's the way it should be. And I think, Barry Hearns talked about that before. He's talked about wanting to get this level set up so that then you develop a qualifying system and you start involving other pool rooms and other smaller promoters all around the world. And it becomes this big feeder system. I think everybody would agree with that. I think I think ideally all these top tournaments, I would love to see them. You qualify them and it caps at 128. That to me would be like a pro tour type of approach to it. And so,
Tour
I think
card. You get your
in the
tour
yeah,
card.
I think in a perfect world, everyone would love to see that. But that's part of this evolution that Mike's talking about. It's stuff that has to happen organically over time as these different levels get put in place and become sustainable on their own. Then you add these other levels too. You can't run before you walk. Mike?
Lena?
I used to love the qualifiers for the World Championships out of Qatar. They were some of the deepest and toughest qualifiers you could
Yeah.
imagine. I mean, with monster names. If you guys ever saw those
They
brackets, and I
were
think
all
you
on
would have,
site though, right?
they
They were
were,
all on
yeah, and
site.
they were ahead of time. And I think you'd probably have like, man, I don't even know, maybe like 8 groups of 16
Killer.
place, yeah, of
Yeah.
just
Killer
monster
stuff.
players. Yeah, I mean, it was unbelievable the talent that was there in those qualifiers. Look, at the end of the day, I love the banter, I love the debate, but the pool's going in the right direction, right? We could talk about why things are down for the sport, or how this looks bad for us. This is what we got. But at the end of the day, show that list, Joey. Look at all that money that's being added by these promoters, and
Unreal.
these are just from the essentially the two big boys of pool.
Yep.
That's not including all these ballroom owners across the country who are putting up 10, 15, 20, 30, $40,000 on their own to go put on these triple crown style events that include, one pocket and banks, things like that, but decent added money even for rotation games.
Hmm.
Um, I love the way it's looking right now. I don't know if standardization is the way, because Mike's point was really struck a chord with me. I don't want to see the UK and the US and the European and the English all have the same thing over and over and over again, because I think that can be a little rough to watch, especially with the depth of the calendar and how it's going to be. Those little subtle changes are what makes the experience of watching sports unique. There's been, I brought up baseball earlier, but if the fields weren't different, you wouldn't have these amazing, home runs that weren't to be, right, or these catches that were made, on the by the foul ball line that a fan called, whatever. What I mean? It's like, it's those little subtle differences that make every experience unique, no matter where you go across the country. And I think it's no different when it comes to pool. Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
me.
I'm just gonna say one more thing, and then we can kind of put a bow around this and wrap it up. I want to stick with this concept of the qualifiers, and I just want to say that if you look at, kind of what Matchroom's doing and what Predator's doing, I think Predator is really positioned in a unique way. Predator with CSI and that partnership, to really be able to do something with that type of qualifier system, right? They already have the infrastructure in place. Whenever they have one of these Predator Pro Series events, there's an amateur event that's going on there. There's this kind of funnel of players, a lot of them that would play in the amateur event, but instead they're going to take a shot at the Pro Series event. I really think they could pull something off with a qualifier system for this series of events they have that would be really nice and interesting to see. I think Matchroom, it's completely different. It's a top down approach, right? They
Right.
have the ear of all the pro players as well as all the pool fans, right? We know to follow their events. We know to tune in because it's going to be the best of the best. And that's the key to the Moscone Cup and other events throughout the year. And they do have variety. While the format is coming together and it's the same for a lot of their big events, the diversity of events they have with the World Cup of Pool, the World Pool Masters, Premier League Pool, is that Championship League? It's Premier League
Yeah.
now, I think. Um, it does create that uniqueness that get the most out of your DAZN subscription and be able to watch it throughout the year. Uh, I'll second your point, Melina, that wow, like we weren't talking about this issue 3 years ago, right? It
No.
wasn't even a discussion. If you look at the
Right.
money that's up there, I'd be willing to bet 40% at least of the money that's represented in this chart, maybe a lot more, didn't exist 4 or 5 years ago. A lot of
Yeah.
this is new money that's come into the sport. It might even be more than that. And so, wow, look at the place we're in now.
Yeah.
Much better place for pool. A lot of stuff for us to talk about and get excited about. So, with
And I
that,
hear
I'll
it's
give it to
only the
Pinozo.
beginning.
I'll give it to
It's
Pinozo for the last word on the majors, but I'm going World 9 ball, World 10 ball, World 8 ball, US Open, the
Derby
major
City.
tournaments right there. Pinozo, take us out, man. What do you think?
I don't know, yeah, I don't even know where the hell I stand on it because I really kind of almost think we're starting to get to the point where it's going to go into two different directions, and you're going to have a 9 ball and you're going to have a 10 ball, and the other events are just world championships, whether it's straight pool, 8 ball, things like that. So you're going to have a 10 ball. They're going to have their majors and their tour and their tours, tour winners and their major winners. 9 ball is going to have its tour and its major winners, and I can live with that. And if that's the case, then like I said, with the 9 ball, I would do World, U.S. Open, International, and Asian. Um, but I love what you said about what we're looking at today as opposed to the last couple of years. I mean, just that list of tournaments that we threw up there before, $1.5 million in added money.
Yeah.
It's growing from there. So I like where we're headed. Makes these discussions worth talking about and with some substance.
Yeah. Well, guys, thanks so much for tuning in.
Mikey,
What
last word.
no,
No, I still go.
Sorry.
I'll see you at Derby City. We'll talk about the depth of the field.
Okay.
Um, I listen. I'm excited for all this, and I love all these discussions. I think Mike, you did a great job, and you killed it in this episode for just having your facts and your ducks in order. It's
yeah.
almost like you've been covering the sport for the last 40 years. So uh, I will concede part of my argument, and you're still the goat, my man. So
Okay,
thanks, man.
cool.
Yeah, you got to work on your spreadsheet skills, get those dollar signs consistent. But
Thank you.
otherwise, great job, Pinozo. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor, support us on Patreon. We will see you next time.